Hey friends and book lovers, welcome back. I saw this idea originally on Megan's Reading Revelations where she did 5 books that surprised her, and I don't know exactly what she went into in her video because I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I was like, I love that. I want to do 5 books that surprised me, but in a good way. So these are 5 books that I wasn't really sure about or I didn't think too much of going into them, but honestly they were a pleasant surprise for me, and ones that you probably heard me talk about before, some that you might have never heard me talk about before, and then ones that you might have heard a couple of times here and there. And I think one of those is a start to a series, so the first in a series, and I really want to read the other 2 in the trilogy and give a review because I don't hear that trilogy talked about often on BookTube, on Bookstagram, anywhere except among like my boyfriend and his friends. They really enjoy it, and I'm like, this first book is really well written and it's a really interesting premise. I want to share that with the rest of my bookish friends because it's fantasy, dark fantasy, and it's awesome. So I'll get into that one later, and I'll start off with another one first, and you'll hear all about the dark fantasy book that I started very shortly. Gosh, sweaters are so itchy sometimes. The first book that I want to talk about is one that it's been on my favorites list for 2021, but one that also surprised me because I wasn't sure going into it if I would really enjoy it or not, and that would be Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the lovely hardcover. I also have special editions, but this is the one that my fiance got for me, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna feature it in a video. He worked very hard to get me this copy, and it is a gorgeous copy, and it's hardcover. You gotta love a man who gets you the hardcover versions, or any partner for that matter. This one I wasn't sure if I was gonna like. I like mafia, but I like fantasy, and I like them separate. I don't always love the mafia stories or the heist stories as much as other people do. Now this is not a heist story, but it's definitely a mafia story, and it's mafia with Jade, and it's actually amazing. Any doubts that you might have about Jade City, read it, because I guarantee if they're like my doubts were, everything will be fine and you're gonna really enjoy this novel. I personally love it, and then I love the entire trilogy. It was a binge for me. I think I read Jade City and then I paused. I read Jade War and then I binged Jade Legacy right after Jade War because I knew that I wouldn't be able to wait. So I was really lucky in the sense that I started the series in October, and so I didn't have to wait very long for it to conclude. I know others had to wait quite a long time, but I was the lucky one. I did not have to wait, and it was amazing, and I highly recommend this series now, even though I wasn't sure about it going into it. This next one is one that I just reviewed on a Sunday, so if you haven't seen that video, please go ahead and check it out. I will link it up here and down below. It is for Master Artificer by Justin T. Call. This is the second book in the Silent Gods series. This is his first quartet from a 12-book series that he's doing, and I had read Master of Sorrows last year, which is the first one, and I gave that one a 3 stars. I wasn't really sure about the series after I read that one because that one just didn't have all the elements of a fantasy book that I really like to read, but I still wanted to give the sequel another shot and see if things were different, and they were like I would expect them to be for a sequel, for instance, and lucky for me, they were. I really love this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I like it a lot more than the first one, but also after reading it, understand and appreciate the first one a lot more now. That said, I will not be changing my star rating for the first one. It still is the rating that it is, and I'm not really ever going to change that, but I can appreciate it having read this one and maybe having seen what the author is trying to do. I will say Master Artificer also kind of has this D&D feel to it. I put that in, I think, an Instagram post. I think he's a gamer, but I'm not sure about D&D specifically, though this one with the Artificer and the magic and the artifacts and everything, it's very D&D-esque in its materials, and I think it's really cool to see the influences of a game and that kind of storyline in a new fantasy series. So if you like that kind of magic and you like grimdark fantasy, then this is one for you. I really do enjoy it, and I think the second book is even more grimdark than the first book, but I really enjoy it. So go check out my review. It is spoiler free on Master Artificer, and if you like Master of Sorrows, I think you're gonna love this, and if you're not sure after reading Master of Sorrows, you should definitely continue on with Master Artificer. The next one is actually a fantasy romance, and I applied to do a book tour and read an arc of this book, so if you wanted to see the review on this book, a full review, go check out my Instagram. That's always linked down below in case you don't follow me on there, and you can check out that review in the caption under the picture. So I have a fully fledged review there, but I did give this one a 4 stars. Now, not every book on this list is going to be a 5-star book, but this one was a 4 stars, and it surprised me in a good way. I wasn't 100% sure what to think when I was going into this one. I just thought maybe it was another ripoff from Equitar or another Fae romance, but it's really not that. It definitely gives me vibes from the From Blood and Ash series, but it's not a total ripoff, and it's definitely a story unto its own. And oh my gosh, that ending, definitely a little bit of a cliffhanger, but very much worth it. So this one released on February 22nd of this year. I got to read it a few weeks ago, and I'm posting about it on my Instagram. Actually, I was really surprised by it. I wasn't sure how I would like it. I wasn't sure if it was for me, but actually I found it really easy to read. It was in first person. It's a young adult, new adult fantasy romance. There's definitely some good spice in there, and there's also really interesting lore and plot as well. So it's not just about the romance or the spice. The actual lore itself is really interesting, and we haven't even finished. This is going to be a duology actually, and the second one is releasing in August, so I'm excited to be reading that one when it comes out. And it's also available on Kindle Unlimited, so if anyone is curious and wants to read it and has Kindle Unlimited, definitely go check it out. I read it, flew through it. It only took me a couple days, really, you know, 2 or 3 days to read it, and it was a really fun time. So I was really surprised. I don't always love fantasy romance. Feel like sometimes they can be copies of each other, but with this one I felt like it was fresh enough that I really enjoyed my time here. And What Lies Beyond the Veil, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it is by Harper L. Woods and Adelaide Forrest, and I'm just very excited to get to participate reading these books. So super excited that my first book tour that I participated in was a book that I actually really enjoyed, because you never know. I mean, this one's probably a little predictable, but oh well. It's Malice by John Gwynne. I still have not finished the series, and I know that I know that the third one like kills you, and then the fourth one helps put a band-aid on it. So I have dedicated myself to reading the rest of the series this year. I still have a pretty good understanding of what happened in Malice. I might just skim through some of the points that I highlighted here just to make sure that I remember all the things that I was like really intent upon remembering for the next one in the series. But this is one that pleasantly surprised me. I think I gave it a 4 or 5 stars, probably a 5 stars. I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the tropes that were used. I really enjoyed the writing style, and I'm intrigued to see where the book is going. I had a great time with the lore. I think, again, like in most sequels, the lore only gets better and more complex and intricate and more interwoven with the world building, which is what I'm excited to see. And with John Gwynne's writing style, for a debut novel, this is amazing, and I really enjoyed it. I know that it can be polarizing, not everyone enjoys it, but I definitely did, and I'm happy to be in that camp. And I absolutely love John Gwynne as an author, even though I need to read the rest of his books and his work so far. So this is one, I know y'all have heard me talk about it all the time. Here's another, you know, little pitch to it. I love it, and I need to read the rest of the series. So we will definitely be reading the second one in this series, Valor, very soon this year. All right, and the last one, that dark fantasy that I talked about in the beginning of this video, if y'all remember, that one was actually the first in the Dungeons and Dragons series. This one is called Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. It is the Legends of Drizzt, but they are tied to the Dungeons and Dragons world, and I guess it's like the Forgotten Realms. I don't know in detail what all the different names for Dungeons and Dragons are, but I know enough of it from everyone around me playing it that I kind of understand. This, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this book. I read it, my boyfriend got me the trilogy. It's his favorite set of books and his favorite character, so he got me the trilogy knowing that I'm a huge bookworm. This is the first one, and I had been in the middle of reading it, so we decided to finish it off on audio during one of our road trips. I was like blown away. I love this writing style, and I love the world that it's built on, because it's so different from any other type of fantasy world that you'll typically read in. And it's not, at least for me, it's not your typical hero villain story. It is this very dark fantasy book, and I didn't know that I would enjoy dark fantasy so much. Maybe I wouldn't enjoy other books, but I definitely enjoyed this one. So this one's also on my list to finish the trilogy for the year, and they're not crazy long. They're 300 pages, mass market paperbacks, so very easy to read and digest. but I love R.A. Salvatore's writing so much. I think if the rest of the series, his writing is just like this, I would be very compelled to read the rest of his work. He has other series that he's come out with too, not just the Legends of Drizzt, but I mean, this is amazing. I was very surprised. I think I gave this like a 4.5 stars or something, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the series, and maybe even just all of the series in this world. He kind of does the same thing Robin Hobb did, where you have trilogies in the world and you can kind of skip around if you want to, but people usually read them in publishing order. And I think he has like, I don't even know how many series are in his world, but there's so many. Okay, so it looks like there's like 9 series. I think most of them are trilogies, save for 2 which are quartets, and there's 1 companion novel. There's a lot of books. There's like so many books in this series, but I mean, yeah, there's 30 books. But I really enjoy his writing. I might be compelled to just borrow them from my library and read them all, or read them on audio with my fiance because he loves them so much. So yeah, definitely credit where credit is due. This series and this book is amazing, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I was very surprised with this one because I really didn't have any expectations going into it, and I just thought I would be like meh about it, but really, I very much enjoy myself. And that is it for the 5 books that have pleasantly surprised me as of recent, that I can kind of think were genuinely surprises and not just hunches or predictions. They were genuine surprises. I really didn't have a lot going into these books and came out very happy after reading them and very thankful that I had read them. So that is always great news as a book reader. If you guys have series that have surprised you and that you've absolutely fallen in love with after reading them but not before, kind of going into them with lower expectations, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear what series surprised you. And if you've read any of these books, again, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of them if you haven't already. If you like this video, please click that like button. That really does help me out a lot. And if you like my content and you want to see more from me, please don't hesitate to subscribe.